Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Upkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 132. Did you know that when companies use clear and objective criteria to promote people, they become 75% more likely to promote women? That's not because women suddenly perform better, but because promotion decisions move away from perception and toward evidence. It's one of the key insights from my conversation with Tiffany Aude and Yoana Leusin. They're the founders of Impowr, a coaching platform for ambitious women in male-dominated industries. And it's fair to say that this episode challenges some familiar assumptions about how careers are built and who rises inside tech companies. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, we talk about what it really takes to build a workplace where women can thrive. We explore why so many women leave tech before reaching leadership, what leaders need to rethink in terms of requirements and incentives, and how mindset plays a critical role in whether women step into leadership or step back. We also talk about the role that allies played in Tiffany's and Joanna's careers and what meaningful allyship actually looks like in practice. So when you're ready to listen and learn how to design the workplace that women in tech actually want, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Tiffany Aude and Yoana Leusin. Yoana Leusin, Tiffany Aude, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have
Thank you
you.
for having us.
The question I always ask at the start is how you got into your current job or current position. And Tiffany, maybe you start.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot in common already. And what you'll see on our CVs is we both have psychology backgrounds. We've both been in recruitment for the last 8 years, working in sales, performance management. We're both ICF trained coaches. But obviously we had very different paths like leading up to there.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, I'm actually from France originally. I moved to the UK for my studies where I did psychology, and I worked throughout my university time in different jobs. A lot of jobs in hospitality, and I was working with mainly men essentially. And I was always being excluded out of management meetings, even though I was part of the management team in the jobs that I was working in. And I eventually moved into an events role after university, where I remember one day my boss said, "Okay, I want you to stand here and smile and hold up this piece of paper that says conference room A this way." And that's when I was like, "Hang on a minute. This is not at all what I envision for my career. Like I want more agency, I want more power, I want more impact." I remember I then moved to London, a recruitment job. And what attracted me so much about recruitment is that it's a meritocracy. So it's a sales role. What you put in, you get out essentially. And that's what I was so intrigued by is like, okay, my work would just be recognized for the efforts that I put in. And at that point in my life, I was 21, and I was so hungry for power, I think. I remember I went to a restaurant once and like this fancy restaurant in London with my boyfriend. And there was a table of men. There was like 5 men in business suits sat around a round table, and they were all talking with each other. And I remember thinking, I wish I was one of those men. I wish I was one of those men at that table because I just wanted to be like part of something and I wanted to feel powerful. And when I was in recruitment, the first year of my recruitment career was was not not quite that. I was at the bottom of the sales leaderboards. I was not performing well at all. I was very much like blaming all of my results on, things outside of my control and just getting in a really negative headspace.
Mhm.
And that's when I basically um, discovered mindset and what that is, and shaping your perspective and shaping your narrative, and how does the story you tell yourself impact your reality. And I became completely obsessed with figuring out how can you shape your reality thanks to reshaping your mind and how you think. So since then, I basically have read any book there is to read about it. I've done hypnotherapy, I've done talk therapy, I've done coaching, I've done all of the things like that basically teach you about your mind and how you can choose how to think so that you can then shape your reality. And that's what made me really passionate about then, okay, I want to help other people with this. And that's what got me into performance management when I moved to Amsterdam about 5 years ago, which is also where I then met Yoana.
Okay. Can I just double click on one thing, Tiffany? Because you said something that intrigued me. You see these five men sitting around the table and you think of yourself, I was one of them. Did you at that moment mean I was a man and
Yeah,
then being in that space, or a woman
no,
joining?
that's what's so interesting because like now being myself now when I look back at that, uh at that point in time, my thought was, "I wish I was a man." Not just, "I wish I was a woman at that table." It was actually like, "I wish I was one of those men." Because my experience up until then was as a woman was just that I was like, just treated as like some pretty thing that just smiles, and so I really had I mean, there were other things in my personal life as well, but I just had this like grudge of like, I wanna be a man. Now I'm very, very happy being a woman.
Yeah,
And and I can see, incredible, amazing women around me that who I wanna be like, but at that time, that was essentially that's how I felt at the time, yeah. Interesting,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Thanks for sharing also.
Yeah, of course.
So, Joanna,
Yes. Yeah. So for me, I'm from Bulgaria, and that is a bit more traditionally patriarch based society. But I was in a family where both of my parents, my mom and dad, actually encouraged me to be the best version of myself, regardless of gender. And I remember when I was young, I was in competitive swimming, and I entered it at like 6 years old or something. And when you do compete at that age, you're competing boys and girls all together. And I remember always striving to be the best swimmer, regardless of being a man or a woman. I've always looked up to my mom that has an incredibly successful career and has been like a great mother. So I've always seen the example of women being able to do it all.
mhm,
And I actually didn't realize what advantage that is until I started working in sales, which is, traditionally heavy male dominated space. And, everyone around me was mostly, the people around me were men. And the way that their communication style was very different to what I'm used to, even though, I consider myself quite a direct person, and then in being able to assert myself and communicate. But it was still very, very interesting. So as I started progressing through the sales ranks, I got that motivation of actually being able to upskill others and give them the tools that have made me successful,
mhm,
which is how I moved into performance management. But I think what really got me um, interested in starting our own thing and being focused on women is, especially we are targeting women in mid-level of their career, and that what we qualify as that is women that are somewhere, in the middle of, let's say, the ladder, right? So have some experience, know what they want, but don't quite know how to get there. And how that relates to me is when I was promoted to director, I was in a boardroom, and I realized that in that boardroom, there was nobody like me. And what I mean by that is there were women in the boardroom. There were women in the boardroom, but they had 15 years of experience on me. And everyone else was a man. Everyone that was my age was a man. And I was I was having a massive difficulty being able to influence others, because either I would be perceived as too direct, or when I would share concerns about the business and what my solutions to that are, that would be that I'm nitpicky and negative. And what that led to is me scrambling to find resources to upskill myself. And I searched everywhere. The amount of leadership programs I've done, I've asked my company to sign me up to, I've signed myself up to, right? Just that constant search for upskilling, because I felt that there is something missing. So it took me so many different established programs about leadership, even Harvard Business School programs, everything, you name it, I've done it. And then actually, when Tiffany and I were talking about everything, my perception was there is so much out there, but there's nothing that combines everything into a streamlined process and that is targeted towards people like us, right? People that need the resources on, as Tiffany mentioned, mindset. In my case, a big one was around presence and being able to communicate and personal branding and influence, that we were like, we have to do something about it. We are so passionate about it. Let's set up something that we would have needed when we were in that position. Long story short, that's
How did the two of you meet, by the way?
we worked in the same company. We worked in the same company, and a bit of a funny story there. We were initially not the biggest fans of each other, which now in a business, the reason why is because we have very different styles. Our values are the same and what we care about is the same, but our approach is different. And you can imagine that in a corporate environment, that doesn't gel really well. Now, in setting up a business, that is an extreme advantage, right? Because we can tap into one thing from multiple perspectives. But we actually grew fond of each other over strawberry gin cocktails.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we started as, I guess, kind of frenemies, and eventually, it grew into a friendship. It grew into an amazing working relationship. So we worked in the same team for almost 3 years. And as Yoana mentioned, because we operate so differently on any account, on every account, it just allows us to be able to tackle challenges from different angles, and it allows us to be more innovative because we then have to come to an agreement somehow. So we keep like massaging the problem until we get to something that we're both super happy with. So now we're business partners. And I think that's why we've been able to work so well together in our business, is because we started as
We got that out of the way.
we got that out of the way, and then we had an amazing working relationship, and now an amazing friendship, and now an amazing business partnership. So
Yeah.
that's
So out of curiosity, because in corporate life, it's sort of competitive.
Mhm.
How come it's competitive in a corporate environment and the same setup with the same people, with the same characters, all of a sudden now working, all of a sudden, in air quotes, of course, all of a sudden now work together like
Yeah.
always has been that way.
Yeah.
I
I
find that really intriguing.
Yeah, and I think well, first of all, because I joined the business, what, 6 months after you did, something like that? Me joining, we were already set up to be competitive towards each other. So the way that the business was structured was that we were overlooking different teams in this highly, highly competitive environment, and the leadership that we had was already encouraging a, like, divide between us from the get-go. And it was when, what, a year later maybe, or something like that, when we actually sat down together and, like, had some strawberry gin cocktails, and just talked things out, that we realized, like, "Oh my gosh, what?" Like, actually, no, we're so in alignment on so many different things that so I do wonder if I think the setup had a big part to play in that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the rigid structure because both of us are competitive people and both of us love a competition.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I actually think that's an amazing thing because whether it's competition, with yourself and trying to better yourself every day, which is actually not the best kind, but
Mhm.
I think that's something that gets you to strive to improve. And I think that's an amazing thing. The problem comes when there is like such a rigid structure, and competition competition is positioned not as something that's improving you, but as something that's also,
You need to destroy the other
damaging
person.
the other person. Yeah. And I think that was the problem. And that is the problem in many of those competitive situations because competition can be used in such an incredible way to inspire results, to inspire development, to inspire growth.
Mm.
But taken a step too far, then actually it destroys morale. It destroys the culture of a company. So yeah, that's why it works better now because we set up the structure and we decide what is what.
Yeah. And I think that's very important. The structure and the culture, and the way of behaving towards each other determines pretty much all the outcome. So indeed, to
Mhm.
your point, Johanna, if you set up people against each other, not in a healthy competition, but in
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
kill each other,
Mm.
um, then you get that mindset,
Absolutely.
which is not something I think a lot of people thrive in. To be honest, takes very specific people. So what I was wondering about, because you coach high performing career oriented women,
Mm.
and for some reason these women do not get to leadership roles a lot. They don't get hired and they don't get promoted. At least from if I look at the tech statistics, I think once you get from mid-level management to senior level management, there's like you lose pretty much all the women that
Yeah.
are there. How come? What
Yeah.
happens at the mid level that is an obstacle to companies to either hire or promote these women?
Yeah, and maybe just before we answer that question, is just to give a bit more context, going back to why I like Empower,
Uh,
is what we've experienced ourselves and what we've seen is, all of the top most socially, politically influential industries in the world are male dominated. So, hence why we live in a man's world, right? Because those industries that are shaping the world we live in are run by men, in vast majority. So, what we were able to see, is the tackling that issue is twofold. It's one, encouraging the women in those industries to own their power, to play bigger, and also encouraging those industries and those companies to make changes
mhm.
from both sides. Just to lay the foundation on there before we answer that question.
Yeah, if we were to look specifically at your question, that is absolutely correct. In fact, 56% of the women in tech leave by mid-career, and only 28% of senior management roles globally
Huh?
are held by women.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear anybody anywhere say that it's due to lack of skills, competence, or ambition, because on the opposite side, women are starting their own businesses at incredible rates. And in the last year, probably parity levels compared to men. So it's not the lack of ambition, and it's not the lack of skills, and it's not the lack of competence. In fact, there are so many different factors that are feeding into that. One of them is, well, it's widely called the promotion paradox. And it is about the difference that companies are using when promoting men and women. And it is that men are promoted on potential and women are promoted on performance. And there was an MIT research analyzing 30,000 management track employees, like 30,000, right? That's a big set. And what they found is that women receive 8.3% lower potential ratings. However, they receive higher ratings on their performance. So even though their performance is higher, their potential is evaluated at a lower percentage. And they're 14% less likely to be promoted.
Yeah.
Now,
Do you know why that is? Why not why women
Yeah.
are looked at from a performance point of view and men from a potential point of view, but why are women see, even though they perform better, so the actual delivery, they over deliver compared to the expectation, and still they're not promoted
Well,
because of a lack of potential. How come?
there's lots of reasons, but one that was really interesting that we were like, what? Was in performance reviews, they had done a study on it that 78% of women were seen as emotional versus only 11% of men in their performance reviews themselves. The other thing is that when women are receiving feedback in their performance reviews, 22% of that feedback is personality based versus concrete. Hey, here's what I've seen on your performance. Here's what I think you should do differently. So the way that women are treated and perceived is completely different to the way that men are treated and perceived. And that plays a massive impact then on, well, exactly as Yoana said, their performance is higher, but the perception of women and their potential is lower. And there is actually one more thing. When we were doing a bit of prep and looking into some data to be able to be more precise in what we're saying, what we found out that feeds into that is that men, when they become parents, their salaries increase by 6 to 12%. However, women, when they become mothers, their salaries decrease by 4 to 7%. And some of it is based on the fact that women choose less working hours or go for companies that are more parent friendly. But another thing is about perception. And that perception also feeds into the potential rating, right? Some of it is perception that now that they're mothers, they're not going to be able to do their job properly. And some of that perception starts before they even become parents to begin with, right? So some of that perception starts from the moment that they are hired, which is another factor that is probably feeding into that potential factor being rated lower.
Yeah. Yeah, the numbers about it's also really paradoxical, right? That men are actually there's a penalty on not becoming a father, whereas for women there's a penalty on becoming a mother.
Yeah, how do you imagine the world's gonna keep on going?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting paradox. In part, the care is this also because of the care duty that is primarily on the women's side of the family.
That is a whole other thing. Women actually do 3 times more
Yeah,
like domestic tasks, and that includes
Working women.
that doesn't just include taking care of children. That includes household tasks, involvement in the relationship with the partner, taking care of elderly people around them, being more influential and more approachable by the society they live in. It goes way beyond just childcare.
yeah, yeah. So women are doing more,
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
and
They're
get
doing
paid less.
and yeah, it's great. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
You're still happy to be a woman?
Yeah. I wouldn't change being a woman for
No,
the
no, no.
world.
Just kidding, of course.
But no, and that's why I mean, and we'll go into it, I'm sure, in our discussion at some point. But that's why you see so many women are just exhausted. They're just exhausted and depleted, even though women in majorities are more highly educated. They're performing better than men in corporate environments. They're all of these things point to, as Yoana said, them being more capable. Women also have higher resilience rates than men, and yet they're just exhausted, and it's because of what you just mentioned, that invisible work that they're also doing, not only within the company, which we'll go into, but also in their personal relationships, that isn't accounted for.
True. So let's go to solutions, because there's, interestingly enough, also legislation on the way that plays into this. There's a whole slew of EU directives based on pay transparency. I think there's parental leave, board diversity, which
Yep.
is an important one, because then all of a sudden companies have to start creating that pipeline, even though they think women don't have that much potential. So let's first look at what kind of legislation is coming up and what they mean, how they impact companies.
I'm sure we're going to get into that, but I just want to preface everything that we're saying with we are not just la 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 talking, and we are not talking about like, oh, let's put women in board positions just because. We're going to get to it, I'm sure, and we're going to show how much profitable that's actually for companies to to invest in that. But when it comes to the acts that are going, well, one that's already in motion, it's the Dutch Gender Balance Act that was established in 2022, and it's requiring boards to have at least 33% women. That's a third, right? We're not talking about 50-50, we're talking about a third. Now, since that's been implemented, 20% on the listed companies are not yet compliant with it. And again, we're talking about a third. It's not like some massive numbers. And how that's impacting companies is that new board appointments are null or void. And there is a 50K fine per violation, plus personal responsibility for directors that actually violate that. And some interesting things is that it's damaging the company more than that. It's stalling innovation at incredible rates, over 70%. It is taking longer to make decision-making process. There's divestment by investors. So all of that, it's actually costing companies money.
Yeah. And the other thing on that is, one of the other ones is the EU Transparency Act that companies need to be compliant to by June 2026, and then the reports will come out a year later. But essentially, companies are going to have to publicly report their pay gaps across the organization, and anything that is above equal to or above 5%, they're going to have to have corrective action around it. So if you're not compliant to that, you're going to get some fines. I know in the Netherlands, I think it's up to like 10,300 euros per violation. But essentially, what that's going to do is really have an impact on the business in a few ways. On one hand, if you're not compliant, the investors you're going to be able to attract is going to be less.
Yeah.
Your employer branding is going to be at risk. So in terms of your hiring and growth, you're going to have a tough time attracting anyone if if your pay gaps aren't equitable.
On a blackmail list.
And the other thing is also just your market share, right? Because as we know, like consumers are more and more mindful of the types of businesses that they buy from. Like, are they cruelty free? Are they sustainable? And so forth. And the same will be true with, okay, if your branding is a business that isn't paying their women fairly compared to their men, like your market share is going to go down. So those are some really amazing things that we're seeing come in that are going to start actually from a structural perspective, from a systematic perspective, actually start making a difference.
Yeah, I think it's one of the points that I always try to make to people is that you're losing out on a lot of talent,
Mm,
and you're going to lose out on more talent because what woman in her right mind would apply to a company that has a gender pay gap and doesn't do anything about it?
And not only talent, like they're losing actual revenue.
Yeah,
If
no,
we
no, no. That
Yeah,
is a point. But the thing that I always try to make is more on the talent side, because
yeah,
companies want to do the right thing and they need to comply. But if they don't correct the pay gap, they are sort of shooting themselves in the foot
absolutely.
yeah,
because they disable themselves from improving.
Yeah, and let's say, I don't know, I've put myself in the shoes of a business owner that has, however many employees. Okay, yeah, you're going to have to put some money, into your salaries. That might feel like a hit. Um However, the not doing that is going to have such a bigger impact long term, not only on, yeah, your market share and so forth, but actually, yeah, as Joanna said, like actually on your profit. Like companies that have women in senior executive levels are financially perform better by 25%. It's actually a good financial business decision to be bringing and retaining women in your businesses. It's not just oh, well, we have to be nice and fair. It's actually
It's
it's
hard
actually a
business.
very smart business decision to
Yeah.
be making.
if you were to look at some of the benefits that women in senior positions and women in board positions are adding to the table, I don't know, and you were to paint a picture and look at an example, because women are actually providing higher women in board level are providing higher annual returns.
Yep.
There is less turnover costs, and there is overall what Tiffany said, engagement linked productivity. So with all of those, if you take a company that's making, say, 10 million in revenue a year, with all of these things that women are contributing to being in senior and board positions, that company can increase their revenue by over 15% if they were to invest in the talent they already have, right? They already have it available, right? So it's just about developing and investing in these people that can bring over 15% additional revenue.
Yeah, so let me just double click on that, because you're giving the advantages of why, and these advantages are clearly not just being nice and fair, but also
Mhm.
hard business KPIs. So we know this about performance, about innovation levels, about the increase in financial results. Why then is it that it's for companies so damn hard to put this in place so women do get to those top levels? Why do
Yeah.
you think that is? Is that also the let's say, is that because men don't know how to change?
Yeah, essentially one of the things is that there was a study that was done that showed that I think it was something around maybe 73% of men
Mhm.
believed that enough was already being done for having better gender equality in businesses versus 13% of women.
Huh?
The perception that men have, and obviously we're talking about male dominated industries, is that like, oh, but we're already doing everything we have to do. And the other thing you have to remember is like the way women are socialized as children versus the way men are socialized as children, the way women are brought up in society versus the way men are brought up in society, like women's experiences versus men's experiences. Like men and women are different and they require different things. So while male leaders might be thinking, "Oh, well, you know, we're offering like a Rolex when you hit like this big deal. We're offering, you know, these like company trips to Vegas, or we're offering all of these things. You know, we are doing all of these things to encourage better performance." Okay, but women don't actually want those things. Like, maybe some women do, okay? But in the vast majority, the way you incentivize men and the way you incentivize women and what women's needs are from a business versus what men's needs are from a business are vastly different. And I think men have a blind spot, male leaders have a blind spot when it comes to that. Um, and that's maybe one of the reasons why they're then struggling, like, what's going on? Like, why are we not retaining women more?
And I actually think it's also not intentional.
Yeah.
I think like some of the structures are set in place and they're not intentionally set in place to not hire women, to
Yeah.
not promote women, but it's it's accidentally happening. So there needs to be effort put to reverse the curve. And if you think about, let's start at the beginning of the process, right? So when we're talking about job descriptions, when we're talking about interviews, um, again, we looked into some numbers around the clarity of job descriptions, and that the more vague a job description is, the more likely it is to attract men than women. Women apply to clear, to clear job descriptions with clear responsibilities, not necessarily mentioning the nice to have. So I don't know if
Yeah, and again, one of the things on that, going back to like men and women are different. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not different in value, but they are different, right? And like men are generally more risk taking than women are. Women are more risk averse. Like women, it's in a lot of um in a lot of how they make decisions, they are more considerate with their decisions versus men might be more flippant with their decisions. So when you take a job description, what the study found is that women are going to be 28% more likely to apply if it's clear. If there's, you know, very specific bullet points of like, this is what's going to be, this is what we require, this is what's going to be expected of you in the role,
Mhm.
versus men, right? So again, that's going back on just like male versus female behavior on some of the differences, but again, it might not necessarily be intentional.
No, it's
in
all about who writes the job description, I think.
Yeah,
If you do that as a if one man is writing that, like the manager of
exactly,
the
exactly.
department, he will write down what he thinks he needs, which is usually a copy of himself.
Yes.
Um,
Exactly. It's
yeah,
not, so it's
yeah,
not intentionally this way,
yeah.
but it does cause the effect. And then if you're looking at how things can be actually turned around, one of the ways is the way you write a job description. Another way is the way you structure an interview, right? As you mentioned, people are psychologically prone. That's how we are developed to hire people that look like us. We like people that look like us. So, so an interesting thing is that, for example, by having an objective interview structure and by having a diverse panel on the interview, that actually reduces those gender biases by over 50%. And we did work with a client of ours on their hiring structure. And what they were doing is there were score sheets that were neutral. So they were evaluating candidates based on those score sheets. There was no feedback between the interviewers to avoid bias. There were different gender interviewers. And then there was discussion afterwards on the candidates, but after the score sheets were completed. So it was taking emotion and personal biases and preferences out of it as much as possible. I know that we were at a tech conference in the summer, and they were talking about how AI can also contribute with eliminating gender balances in hiring processes and interviewing. So it is something that is really, really easy to avoid and easy to correct if we're intentional about it.
Yeah. I think that's the key thing, is like the intention and the
But also the awareness, I think. Because
awareness.
what I'm hearing you say is basically that men think they're being nice and considerate and
Enough is
really
being
thoughtful, and that enough is being done because they do their best, but still because they start from a different perspective.
for sure. Yeah, and it's funny, like, I mean, maybe on more even just day-to-day things, like you have, if you're thinking about so like something like 72% of women feel excluded from workplace networking, right? In these industries. And some of the women that we've talked to and the personal experiences that they've given us is when they're socializing, it's going to the pub, it's going to play football, it's going to strip clubs. Like women don't want to be doing that, you know? And that is an actual reality. And
And
even
also, if
mm,
I can interrupt,
mm,
it's organized in the evening.
yeah, exactly. On
That
top of
on
When
top of
women are
that,
doing their double shift.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and even in the last business, you know, one of the teams that we were running, one of them was very male heavy, and the women in that team would come to me and they would say, like, when you're not on the floor, like the jokes that are being made, like the behavior, like it makes me not want to be here. It just makes me not want to be here. It's like a very and it's just the reality. Like, so you have to be intentionally creating spaces that women want to be in and creating cultures that women want to be part of. If not, as Joanna mentioned, like women are leaving and they're going to start their own thing and they're going to um, go to businesses that offer that kind of place that they want to be in. There's it's not necessarily all you know, it's not men versus women and all of that. It's just this has been the reality of how these industries have come up, and now we have to keep making changes to ensure that women are, well, yeah, valorized financially, recognized promotionally, and so forth, to keep building the pipeline of women in these businesses.
Yeah. So let's focus on the pipeline building.
Mm,
We discussed the hiring process. We discussed culture, how
mhm,
important that is, and indeed behavior changes when women are not around, are not, or women leaders are not around, is let's say interesting. But let's say you have the bottom or the top of the funnel is in order, then the middle of the funnel. So how do
mm.
you build a pipeline so that women actually go from the let's say bottom levels of the organization and middle to the middle and then all the way to the top? What
Yeah.
is needed for that?
So one of the things Tiff already mentioned, which is about the perks that are being offered in male-dominated fields. Like, so looking at the things that you currently have and thinking about how can you turn those around to keep women in, and then develop them. So the perks Tiffany mentioned, from status based for men, looking to development based for women. And that ties to the example that I shared at the beginning. Rolexes were like a big reward in the sales space. But what I was craving and what I was seeking out was actually development opportunities on my leadership capabilities and whatnot. So, look into those, but also look into ways that women can be more visible. I mean, like, obviously, sponsorship is something that's massively talked about now, but there is another thing that is around visible opportunities that are intentionally crafted in a company. So let's say, for example, you're not promoting at the moment, or you don't need a person to be promoted, or whatever the case might be. You can set up visibility projects that give women and people in your company in general, but women in particular, the opportunity to showcase their studies. And that actually, there was information around how, first of all, people perceive women when they are able to show their capabilities. But not only does that set them up for success in the future, it actually also reduces their willingness to leave the company and makes them more excited to stay. And on that, another thing is when you're actually promoting people, promote them based on merit. Don't promote them based on social activities, and team bonding. Don't promote them based on presenteeism. Promote them based on merit. And
It's interesting you say this, because the whole DEI discussion is around doing things based on merit, and the basically the premise behind it is that we men, I'm using air quotes here, do things really rationally. So we look at things and we just take a decision, and women are more emotional. But if I hear the story you've been telling so far a bit and cut through it, actually the men are the ones being emotional because they look at the potential, not on the actual delivery, which is the merit that should earn people the right to be promoted if they want.
yeah. Do you know, like, there were some crazy data on that. If a company starts promoting based on merit, right? So meritocracy, then that responds to 75% increased promotional likelihood in women versus only 25% of their performance improves. So what that actually means, it's about perception. Because if you put merit promotional criteria in place, you're three times more likely to promote them. And only 1/3 is actually based on promotion. And that goes back to promoting on potential versus performance.
Yeah. And you see the issue that you have with that as well as like some of the women that we've coached. I'm thinking of like one in particular who had been taking on the work of senior peers who had been let go, who had been told, yes, you'll be promoted, and the goalpost being changed again and again and again. And then finally, when she, advocated for herself and was like, hey, it's been 2 years, what's happening here? They were like, oh, well, you need to be doing the work of a senior a little bit longer before we can give you the promotion. And what that resulted in is her starting to question, oh my gosh, maybe I'm in the wrong industry, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe actually I'm the problem because they're not promoting me, despite that they're giving her the extra senior work because there's nobody else capable of doing it, despite all of the achievements and all the positive feedback that she's getting. But they won't promote her and for whatever reason, and they use that as an excuse, and that kills women's confidence. It kills their confidence. And then you have a, fulfilling prophecy, where women start to retract, they start putting their hand up less, they start expressing themselves less, because when they do, well, it doesn't lead to anything anyways. And you're just having like this vicious,
Vicious cycle. Yeah. Yeah.
which is one of the things that we actually work really, really strongly on with the women is to reverse that. Like, no, you are so capable and you're so ambitious, and we need to tap into that again and have you play bigger, because that's on the women's side of that we see a lot
Yeah.
from the women that we coach.
Yeah, but isn't that? I mean, at some point you get tired of that. Also, you're
For
fighting
sure,
a system
for
that is
sure.
stacked against you.
But if you are a man,
Yeah.
right, listening to this podcast,
Yeah.
just imagine for a second, right? Imagine for a second that you are already doing your job plus someone else's job. You're not being paid for it. You don't have the title for it. And you don't even see how those two things are going to change, right? They say that any job, you need to be either earning or learning,
Yeah.
ideally both, but at least one.
Yeah.
So when you don't have either, how long do you think you're going to keep on going at the same speed without questioning yourself or without getting frustrated about what's going on?
Yeah, and when you're asking for feedback and you then get told, "Oh, keep doing what you're doing, you know, you're so positive. Oh, keep doing what you're doing. You're such a great influence on the team." And that's the only feedback that you're getting.
It's draining, it's tiring.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't give you, right? It doesn't give you specific clarity on what to do next.
Yeah.
And as we discussed with the job descriptions,
You need
women like clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true as well. And I think to your point, Joanna, many men who are listening to this and imagining, okay, what would it be like for me, will probably think something along the lines of, okay, I would be out of there in a heartbeat because I'll
100%.
just take another job. They can go
100%.
to, well, wherever.
Absolutely. And and women take so much longer to reach that point of, oh fine, well I'm out then. Because they first go into a cycle of questioning themselves. And that's the way that their mind goes. They'll start analyzing, okay, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? How am I the problem? Okay, let me go look for resources. Let me go do this, let me go do that, before they go, well, hang on a minute, this is bullshit. I'm out.
And
How
also,
do you detect that moment that you go into questioning yourself? Because I think that's really powerful for the women listening. Like if they can detect it earlier, they probably can act on it as well.
Yeah.
I think every woman knows the feeling because women have that ability to impose pressure on themselves.
Mm.
And it is like, it's not only the mental load that you feel, but it's also like the overwhelm that you're experiencing. And I can guarantee you that every woman knows the feeling of sitting there scrambling for answers and thinking, okay, what next? What next? What plan should I put in place? The number of people that we have coached, I was talking to a girl the other day that is self-managing herself, setting her own targets because that's something that inspires her and it's not being done. The amount of things that women do in order to overcome that, it's incredible. And I can guarantee you everyone knows the feeling.
Yeah.
But it's more so them also, what Tiffany said, taking the steps into using data to showcase their worth, being able to communicate properly, being able to present themselves,
Yeah.
and also very important one. And I know that that's something that's not nice for the company themselves, but also knowing when to leave, knowing when enough is enough, and knowing that their worth
Yeah.
is gonna be valued somewhere else.
Yeah. Which is why we find it we like to tackle both sides, is just your mindset and your self narrative and your worth, and really being confident in yourself and your capabilities, as well as, okay, how do you communicate? How do you present yourself? How do you influence? How do you negotiate? How do you self advocate to give yourself the best possible outcomes?
Yeah. And then if all of that doesn't work, it's really time to leave.
Yeah. And I think if you speak to when two women are speaking on this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, me too. Oh yeah, I totally know what you're feeling." So, um, which is why like building a community of ambitious women who are in this position, I
Mm.
do think makes a big impact
Yeah,
because you recognize yourself in someone recognizes themselves in you, you feel less alone, you realize, "Oh, well, hang on, if that's true for you too, maybe it isn't about us. Maybe we're not actually the problem here." You know? And that's super powerful.
yeah. So you help these women also get through these difficult moments and to really up their own, let's say, mental game.
Mm.
Um, can you name some tools that you can recommend for women listening in terms of how to improve on their self worth, self efficacy, maybe even the negotiation strategies? Because women tend to negotiate differently from men as well, which is also leads to a sort of disconnect.
Well, I would say obviously check out Impowr.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the way that our program is structured is exactly based on those things. So, first, we're tapping into mindset development, and we're talking about locus of control. So, what is within your control? How can you shape things? Then we are looking at your presence. And here we are talking about, personal branding, communication skills, change management and influence, all of these things. And the third step in our process is like setting up a clear goal with actionable steps for you to get there. So I would definitely say check us out.
Yeah, for
uh,
sure. The other thing I would say maybe, is something you can start doing is what really helped me back when I was, at the sales board, which I worked my way back up to the top, thanks to this, is first of all, that awareness of your thoughts. Like when you're thinking of your I statements, what are you saying about yourself? Like, what is the story you're telling about yourself? And just become very aware whenever you're thinking, when that self doubt creeps in of like, oh, I'm not capable, I can't this. Is that actually a fact? Or is that just an opinion based on fear? Or is that someone else's voice that's come into your head? Because if you look at the facts, you are educated, you are extremely successful in your job already, you have all of these achievements behind you. But for some reason, because of all of these things stacked against you, the doubt comes in. So I would do an audit of the things that I'm thinking right now, what if that is opinion based and what if that is factual? And then start to catch yourself whenever you're telling yourself a story that isn't actually serving you.
yeah. Can I add one thing that I learned in the past few weeks to that?
Of
Yeah.
course.
So one of the things that I learned in the past few weeks is to when you wake up, your head starts spinning and thinking like about thoughts like I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do such, I have to do so. That is a great moment when you wake up to really challenge yourself. Okay, what am I thinking
Mm.
here? How am I dictating myself what to do? How am I programming my day? Let's say. Then to your point, Tiffany, which of these are imaginary and which of these are real? Because some of taking care of children who need to go to school
Mm.
is real, is a
Yeah.
fact of life. So that's not imaginary, but things around work I have to perform better to get that promotion. Well, maybe not.
Mm.
Maybe it's telling a person like, "Hey, listen, I've been on the wait list for 2 years.
Mhm.
You've been dangling this carrot in front of me.
For
How
sure.
about letting me snoop of it?"
Yeah. And this is the thing is like so for I mean humans, right? So many of our behaviors are driven from subconscious beliefs, right? And these subconscious beliefs, you don't even realize that you have them. And they are driving your decisions, they're driving how you see things, they're driving everything. So getting to really know yourself in that way and being able to then replace that belief with a different one, you can actually do that. Like your brain is neuroplastic, right? So you can actually replace thoughts. And the more you then, first of all, notice what is that subconscious thought that's actually limiting me right now? What do I want to replace it with? And then practice doing that. Practice doing that over and over again. And you eventually replace that belief with a new one.
And something to add to that is, well, I have a couple of things. First of all, going to your point of like what a person can do in the morning, what actually they can do in the evening. There is, okay, so I'm using that gratitude journal from Hema. Those people in the Netherlands would know what it is. But one of the prompts in there is like things that went well today or things that I've done well today, something along these lines. And it's such a great reminder to list that, even this, like, even if they're not like massive achievements, because you can't have that every day, but list out the things that you have accomplished, so that like puts it again more logical, black and white, of the things that you have done. And another thing that I think is extremely important here, and I'll never stop talking about it, is the locus of control, because it removes so much of the frustration out of every situation.
Mhm.
So it is about looking at a situation and thinking, what can you do within your control to get to the outcome that you want, right? So it is not about changing other people or changing, the circumstances or anything along these lines. It is, what can you do in your behavior that can get you to the outcome that you want? And looking at that example of the promotion, it might look like step number one, go and talk about it, see what's possible.
Yeah.
Step number two, I don't know, if it's possible, map out a plan that I can execute, put things in writing, put things in place. If it's not possible and I really want that step in my career, what else can I do? Can I look anywhere else? Do I need any skills to develop to get there? What can I do to get where I want? And that removes so much of that like overwhelm and frustration, because it puts you back into the driver's seat.
You're back
Yeah.
in control.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I want to double click on that in the sense that what can male leaders in an organization do
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
also help women, support women?
Yeah. I actually, in my first recruitment job, I had a director, Zach, male director. And to this day, I mean, this is 9 years ago now. Like to this day, I still talk about this man fondly because of the impact he had on my career. And some of the things that he did was, first of all, in that first year when my performance was terrible, and if you work in sales, usually month 3 you're out. um, he he was in rooms advocating for me, when they're looking at the spreadsheet and they're like, like this, individual is in the red, delete. He was saying, actually, no, 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 I really believe in this individual, like, let me work with her, let me figure it out. And his influence on my career is huge, like from that perspective. The other thing was my boyfriend at the time, he was moving to Amsterdam to open their branch there. And we were going to be moving to Amsterdam as well. The company was going to be opening a branch there too.
Huh?
And I wanted to be the one to put my hand up and say, hey, I want to go to the Amsterdam office because that would work perfectly, one, like on my career, but also my personal life. I mean, looking back at, where I was at the time, I was terrified, like terrified to put my hand up and say, this is something that I want. For whatever reason, I didn't feel that I deserved it. I didn't feel I was good enough. I didn't feel, I was absolutely terrified. I remember having to take a deep breath and count to 3 to force myself to like go have the conversation. And it was, again, I had the conversation with Zach, and the first thing he said was, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let me go talk to the MD and set up a meeting so we can talk about it and make it happen. Like that was his first reaction. Again, that's someone who a male leader had a huge impact on my career. Like the success that I've had in my recruitment career, then being able to move over to Amsterdam, him leading by example of like what a good leader is, so many things. So I mean, if I could just put him here and say, "Be like him," that's what
Okay.
I would say.
Be
But
like Zach.
yeah, be like that, but just like the way his genuine care for the talent that he had in his team, whether it was male or female. He didn't treat anybody differently, and he actively advocated for the people he believed in. Um, and he went out of his way to do it, and that was really powerful.
And I would add, like, outside of advocating for people, I've had two incredible male managers in my life, and I believe I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't be as successful in my career as it was if it wasn't for them. Outside of advocating, I would say remove obstacles. So in my first recruitment job, I was reporting to the head of the office. That was a man, and we were not gelling well together. I don't know what the differences were, right? But there was another manager in the team, Sam, that actually was managing the contract department, and I was doing permanent recruitment. So he took me under him in order to get me perform, because he was seeing my potential, and he was seeing that relationship wasn't working and I was gonna leave, right? So he stood out for me. I remember him having a loud conversation with the head of the office, and he just walked out of the room and said, "It's all sorted, you're reporting to me now." And just removing that blocker away from me, not necessarily boosting or doing anything, but just removing blockers out of my way, got me to perform. And then in my performance job, my manager there, Jamie, he was incredible in the sense that he was consistently developing people to be better than him. Right? That was his whole premise of like, I want to make you better at this job than I am. And he was developing, similar to what Tiffany was saying about Zach, he was developing people and investing in them regardless of their gender. But it was genuine interest in how do you operate, understanding how I operate, and not imposing the way he operates on me, but understanding how I operate and targeting the development based on that. And we were having competitions with him and whatnot, because that's what suit my personality. So if I can summarize all these three things, I would say advocating and noticing the potential in women that you have in your team. To remove at least some of the obstacles that they're facing
Yeah.
day to day. And three, understand how they operate, understand who they are as as people, and invest in their development based on what they need, not what you think is right.
Yeah. And I think a key skill there is listening, like listening to understand, listening to if there are any male managers listening, like go speak to your team and really try to understand and hear them out.
So,
Makes a massive difference.
yeah, use your curiosity. And what I
Absolutely.
also heard you say, Joanna, is let go of control.
Yeah.
Because I think that is really powerful. If you just, especially the part where you talk about, I think it's Jamie who just says, "Okay,
Yeah.
I want you to be better than me." To
Mhm.
say that as a manager takes a lot of guts, and takes also that you go into, let's say, competition, knowing
Yeah.
you can lose and
Yeah.
not caring about it, because you know you're going to be better off yourself as well.
It's the mark of a great leader, I think, regardless of gender, that though like the three people I've just mentioned, they're all qualities of a great leader.
Sounds like a great place to move to my last question. So my goal is to make my podcast obsolete in 10 years just over 7 years now,
Mm-hmm.
20 end of 2032. So from your perspective, what is needed for that? And on the back of that question, how can men like me model healthy leadership and support women in tech more
Mm,
broadly?
mm. I think, well, the number one thing is that we need to move the conversation around this from treating it as an add-on initiative,
Hmm.
you know, and as like an add-on thing, but actually embedding it in as a business strategy. I think is the main thing. Like the perspective, I think why there's such a blocker for people is that, or for, businesses, is that DEI or inclusion or all of that is really seen as like some additional, thing we have to do to look good. Like, actually, no, it's a smart business strategy. When you start treating it that way, it's going to have a massive impact, not only on your business profit, but on, well, the world. So, to your mission of 2032,
And if by all that we have said, right, we haven't been able to convince you that investing in your mid-level women is profitable, smart, strategic business decision, we'd actually love to have a talk with you. And if we have been able to convince you, actually, we'll also love to have a talk with you as well.
So where can people learn more about you and
Yeah.
book a meeting
we're,
to talk to you?
we're all over the place, right? Like, reach us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, go on our website,
Yeah.
www.impowr.co.
Impowers, INPOWR.co.
And yeah, we'd love to get connected.
Yeah. And you can check out, we're often going to different conferences and events and things like that. So in the tech space or in male dominated industry spaces. So we can probably catch you there too.
Okay. Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll include those links in the show notes. So, Yoana Leusin, Tiffany Aude, thank you very much for an amazing conversation.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having us.
Yeah,
And thank you for, on your point, modeling the like male leadership that I think the world needs. So yeah, thank you so much for this podcast and inviting us and everything that you're doing.
you're welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening. And until the next episode, as always, keep being awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to episode 132 of Women Disrupting Tech with Tiffany Aude and Yoana Leusin, titled Designing the Workplace Women in Tech Actually Want. Tiffany, Yoana, and I hope this conversation gave you the practical insights you were looking for, as well as a few moments to reflect. And if you have any questions for Tiffany or Yoana, feel free to share them in the comments on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. If you want to connect with Tiffany or Yoana or learn more about Impowr, you can do so via the links in the show notes. And as always, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog via the link in the caption. And if you're not already following Women Disrupting Tech, please follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. That's the easiest way to make sure you don't miss a future episode. You can also find us on social media. We're everywhere as at Women Disrupting Tech. And if you want to go a bit deeper, you can find Women Disrupting Tech on Substack. That's where I write longer reflections, share behind the scenes insights from each episode, and connect the dots across more than 130 conversations with founders, leaders, and allies in tech. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, please send an email to dirkjan at womendisruptingtech.blog or connect with me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, search for my name, Dirk-Jan Upkes, and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, as always, keep being awesome.